Writers write. That's the number one rule that there is. You can't want to be a writer, you just have to write. You have to put the words down, you have to finish, you have to get pages done. You can't edit a blank page, you can't publish an unfinished story. All of those things are true, and yet we procrastinate all the time. Why do we procrastinate? Why do we not just keep writing? I don't know. This video is here to help me remind myself there's no excuses. Get the work done. Find a way to write words. I started off really well with my novel, and I'm really excited about where it's going. In fact, I'm totally stoked. I'm more excited than I thought I could be as I was getting back into this process. However, I also started to feel quite intimidated by where my brain was going to what the story needed to be. Because of that, I slowed down a bit. I stopped writing the actual chapters and instead started going back and trying to focus on the plot and knowing that it's going to do what I need it to do, and do I understand the characters, and asking myself all of these questions that are important but aren't writing. Writers write. I have to get back into the process. So I'm just here to remind myself of that. Putting this video out there as a yes, this is me checking in on my progress so far. I've been writing, but not nearly as much as I did initially, and I'm still kind of trying to work through a lot of things. For better or worse, I saw a quote from, I think it was John Grisham, who was doing an interview on just a YouTube video, and he said that he writes the same process every time. He writes from the beginning of the, starts at the beginning of the year, and then he just writes until he's done, but he doesn't ever start a novel until he knows how it starts and how it ends. And that got me a little bit worried because I don't know where my story's going. I was trying to embrace the pantser side of life, and I don't know, I got nervous. So then I read another quote that I really liked. I don't know who originated the quote, but the quote is something like, the first time you're just telling yourself the story, and the second time you're going to figure out what you have to say, and plenty of other great advice in some of posts like, just write it. Even if it's trash, write it, and then it's like, add those details later. I have to be unafraid to do that work. I have to be unafraid. I still think I'm young enough to have a lengthy career as a novelist. I just need to get going, and I can't keep waiting. And so again, this is me. This video, more than anything else, is just a reminder, a moment in time reminding me that right now I'm reminding myself there's no excuses. You have to write. That said, you shouldn't feel horrible if you're not writing. You shouldn't feel bad. Don't pile on. You have to let go of what happened yesterday. If you wrote yesterday, great. If you didn't write yesterday, great. What are you going to do today? I have to live that way. I have a very busy life. I have a great career and a family and all kinds of other things that I like to do. Plenty of games that I'm playing. All of those things that I like doing. I'm not going to stop doing those things in order to pursue this novelist idea. However, I have to do the novel writing. Otherwise, I'm just going to feel like I'm missing something in my life. And that's why we write. I'm trying not to be dissuaded by how much money you make as a novelist, which is not very much, because the money isn't why I want to do it. The goal ultimately is to have my name on books up on my shelves. And if I don't do that, it's only because I didn't do it. And I don't want to hear any other excuses. No excuses. And I know that from personal experience. I've been a filmmaker for a long time. I've written and directed many movies. I've written and played a bunch of music with my band. And no, none of it's like good enough to publish for whatever. But I love it. Once you create something, you can never take it away from the creator. It's mine. I made it. And you can decide that you don't think it's good, but I made it. And it exists. I also want to just update everybody on the project that I'm making so that you kind of understand some context when I refer to things in the coming weeks. So I was deciding from a huge list of ideas that I have in my idea folder for which novel I wanted to write first as I came back into writing novels. 20 years I've been writing screenplays. I want to write books again. And I have a whole list of great ideas that I love. I mean, I think they're great. It's up to you. So I had to pick which one I wanted to do first. My son is a teenager. My daughter is almost there. And so I felt that it would be timely for me to try to write a book that he would enjoy reading now that he's in this phase where he's consuming a ton of books. And I thought if I could be quick about it, if I could get a book done by the end of the year, then he could read it when he's still in the sweet spot. This 14, 15-year-old kid, read a book that his dad wrote sort of for him. So I had a few ideas that I like for books that I would write kind of in that YA style. But the one that I ended up landing on and deciding was to take a very old idea of mine, an idea that's not currently in my idea folder, but was one that was in my original idea folder, and rewrite it knowing what I know now and all the experience I have now and the education I have now, and turning it into a story that I would be proud of for my son to read. And that is A Party of Six. This is the original copy. There were 2 copies ever made of the book that I wrote when I was in 8th grade. I wrote it in 1993, 30 years ago. Boy. I'm just going to sit with that for a second and be sad. No, I'm not sad. It's fine. But whatever. 30 years ago, I wrote my first novel. This was a project for a class. I came in every day and I wrote this book. I found this. I had to dig it out of my closet today. And the first... I was thrilled to read my first paragraph. I'm not somebody who normally hates what they do. Like, I like my screenplays and my movies and stuff like that. I'm not one of those tortured artists. However, this is actually hilarious. I have to remind myself that I was 13. I had written nothing before this. Zero experience. And the first chapter of my book, book 1, chapter 1, says, book 1, chapter 1. Dexter eagerly sat forward in his desk. I use an adverb is my second word. Now, we could have a video about how adverbs aren't horrible and all those things, but my guy, Steve King, he has his opinion on adverbs. I have my own, but it is pretty hilarious, that very first thing I write. And again, dude, I'm 13. Like, who knows? I don't know anything. So this is the original concept. I'm not going to follow this at all. I'm not throwing it. It's special. Look at the coffee stains on there. It's nice. I'm not going to follow this exactly, but the concept is going to stay the same. So the concept of this book is that Dexter and his group of friends play Dungeons and Dragons, get sucked into the game, and then have to fight Alderax, the leader of the whatever. I'm just lifting that initial concept. And when I thought about it, I thought that's a really good idea. Our family has been playing Dungeons and Dragons now for a couple years. I rediscovered my love for Dungeons and Dragons when Critical Role Campaign 2 started. I was randomly watching Twitch. I don't even watch Twitch that much. And I turned it on. It said Dungeons and Dragons. I was like, what? And it was the first episode of Campaign 2. And I was blown away. And I've since watched literally every episode of Critical Role. I love them. But it got me back into Dungeons and Dragons. And then having a son who was, preteen, teenage, coming into those years where he might really enjoy it, we've really leaned into it and had a ton of fun. We play every other week as a family. We're almost done with our Storm King's Thunder campaign, which we've been playing for about a year now. And so we've been having a ton of fun with D&D. Now, what I think is interesting is that initially I was just going to do that. Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be the one that I can write quickly. I don't have to think about it. I'm just going to write this story about these kids and they get sucked in, and it's just like, I don't know, dragons and wizards and stuff. But very quickly, I fell in love with Evan, my main character. And then as I started building out the other characters, the party, I started to really think that this book is going to be much more complex than I initially thought, and that definitely terrified me. So the general concept is that I wanted to have a fun fish out of water story, sort of Jumanji, where they get sucked in, they play these avatars, and they can have fun in the world. But as I started doing that, it started to resonate with me much deeper themes and much more interesting character interactions and kind of this interaction between the two, where I didn't want it to be they get sucked into the game and then they're in the game the whole rest of the time and then they come out. I was much more intrigued by more of an ensemble piece where it's the real world and then into the fantasy world. And the fantasy world is going to be where they kind of can work through some of their inner demons. So as an exercise for kind of getting my initial idea out of my brain onto paper that I could start to mold it and change it, I wrote a book blurb. And initially I started with Evan's story, and then I changed it because I think that this is the direction I want to go, where it's more about these 6 people. 6 unlikely friends play a mysterious board game that pulls them into a fantasy realm where their battles against wizards, giants, and dragons are dangerous reflections of the inner demons that haunt each of their hearts. So that's kind of fun. And I have no idea about almost all of that, except that I started building these characters, and they had some interesting inner demons. I watched a couple of really cool videos that I'll link eventually and kind of talk about some videos that have inspired me about internal conflict versus external conflict. That the plot of the story, which I've always been pretty good at creating, is only a piece of what's going to make it good. The internal conflict of these characters is the main thing. As I created Evans, I could build that. I had that going on, no big deal. Ryan, I was a little struggling with. But then as I started to create these others, I was like, man, they got some cool stories. These are becoming people. They're becoming people and having some depth and complexity and some interactions that'll follow that. And I could see that there would be some paths that they would interact later and have some things going on. So I think I know enough about the characters to start building the narrative. I know the construct of how they're going to get together, some of the dynamics of the real world stuff that's going to happen. The thing I've yet to puzzle out literally at all is about what happens when they go into the story world. I've kind of created these character classes that they'll play, but I know nothing about what the world's going to be like, how they interact with it, what the quest line's going to be, what makes it have stakes, how to keep it interesting. I have no idea about that part, and that's the part I'm a little nervous about. I can't decide if I'm going to plot and work through a few things a little bit more before I start getting back into pages, or just getting back into pages. But that is the story I'm working on. Over the next few months, I'm going to update you as I go, and I just wanted to kind of know what we're working on. But again, mostly this video is just a reminder that just keep advancing forward. No matter what your endeavor is, creative or otherwise, keep moving forward. If you didn't do much yesterday, okay, let it go. Find a way to move forward and do what you need to do today. See ya.